Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor, and we're finally shooting our 1-year update on the V Strom 650. It's been a while since I've put out an update on this bike, and it's a shame because I've ridden it quite a bit, and I kind of left you all hanging with swapping over to these Michelin Anarchy Wild and Anarchy Adventure kind of 50-50 tires at the end of the last video, and that was it. That was last fall, so here we are 3 seasons later. We've been running these tires throughout the winter and the spring, and now the summer, and we're coming into fall here soon. So we'll talk a little bit about those. We'll talk about what the bike's been like to have for 4,000 miles and 365 days, and how it's fit into being the main bike in my fleet. For those of you seeing this bike for the first time, this is the Suzuki V Strom 650. It's a 2019 model. Technically, it's the touring trim, or adventure trim, I think it was. The XT Adventure back then. They swapped trim names the next year, but this one came with the center stand, some lower crash protection, some accessory bars, some rear factory luggage there, and this beautiful red paint. Since then, I have installed a top box. I'm not running with it today because typically when I'm just doing more sporty type riding like this, I take it off, but this is what it looks like, and you can see it's very capable, can hold a helmet and a whole bunch of other goodies, as we found out in a few other videos. And I've equipped these Michelin Anarchy Adventure and Wild tires to it. So it's an Adventure in the rear and a Wild in the front. And that's made it a little bit more capable off-road. We have done some off-road running around with it, and it's done a really good job. It came with a little bit more of a street-friendly, off-road unfriendly tire, and we took it off-road and found that it washed out really easy and was a little bit tough to ride in that regard. And these actually came from the previous owner. I bought this bike used with about 800 miles on it, and the previous owner had these tires and included them with the bike. He had never installed them, but he had planned to. One of the main reasons I bought this bike is I wanted a turnkey motorcycle that could do just about everything. It's a jack of all trades. It's still the very, very upper echelons of what is considered a beginner bike. It's rocking a V-twin 650cc motor. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we're riding as well, but about 70 horsepower, 40-some foot-pounds of torque. Not quite so much that, that a beginner would really get in over their head, but it's still plenty fast. So let's hop on the bike, get rolling. Still rocking this universal tank bag, just kind of magnets on there. Let's rock this thing off the center stand. I do love having a center stand. Key on. And for those of you wondering why there's a bright blue rag coming out from under my helmet, that's because I recently switched over to this new Arai helmet and had to reposition my microphone a little bit. I still haven't totally perfected the whole motorcycle riding with the camera setup, and more importantly with the microphone. The camera's not really that big of a deal, but it's tough to get good sounding audio, and a lot of channels recommend heavily dead catting your microphones to try to eliminate the wind noise. And one very rudimentary way of doing that is just wrapping them in a microfiber towel, and that's what I had done with my previous helmet, but I was able to wrap the microfiber in such a way that it really tucked into the helmet. You couldn't really see it. This one I had to do a little bit thinner because it's a tighter fitting helmet, and it looks a little bit silly, but maybe in the future we'll find a more elegant solution. For now, that's why we have a blue microfiber poking out of the helmet. I'm gambling a little bit by shooting this right around rush hour. Ooh, somebody's got some fun toy action there. Oh, it's a thin, small razor. Who's gonna let us through? Are you gonna let us through, Mr. Malibu? Yes, you are. A lot of people laud the V Strom 650 and its sibling, the the SV 650, for its V-twin motor. They say it's got more character, more grunt, just a little different than your run-of-the-mill inline twin. And overall, I have to agree. It is a fun motor. It's one of the things that drew me to the V Strom, especially after driving it back-to-back with the Kawasaki Versus 650. I like its torque all over the power band, and I also like it sounding kind of cool. Ooh, there's some peg scrapage there. here and put up the windshield. I don't think it's going to look quite as good for y'all, but I hope it sounds better. And frankly, I'm more concerned about sound quality right now than you guys seeing a little bit better. Let's see. This is a little extension that the previous owner installed on this bike. Allows you to raise up the windshield just like that. Super quick and easy. Had a little bit more wind protection. Anyway. I really don't have any complaints about the power from this engine either. It's plenty. I mean, this bike's a little bit heavier, so it doesn't feel quite as zippy as my Ninja 650 did, even though motors are making very similar amounts of power. But I will say that the power doesn't excite you in the way that it did on the Ninja. It's very linear, and that's something I knew getting into this bike. I knew that the power wasn't going to crescendo above 7,000 RPM or so. Torque peaks at 6,500, and it kind of just keeps making more and more power from there, but no drama. And sometimes when you're out having fun like this, a little drama would be nice, you know? It'd be okay to have a little bit of drama, a little bit of action, but a lot of people who buy and own V Stroms, put tens of thousands of miles on them, probably aren't really ringing them out above 7,000 RPM that often anyway. They get up to the speed limit like this, and 75 miles per hour, 6th gear, we're running about 6,000 RPM or so probably don't need it to do too much more than that. As you can see, it's still plenty fast enough. Gets up to speed. I mean, bikes are just constantly getting faster and faster, and then they're having to put more electronic aids to make people actually be able to handle them. And it's just a recurring cycle. So even if you get a bike with 200 horsepower, how often is that bike actually making the full 200 horsepower? Or is it nerfing it down so that you don't loop yourself? I have gotten a lot more aggressive in my riding on this bike. I guess what I mean by that is I'm sitting up more up on the tank, and I'm turning the wheel in. I'm trying to get up on the wheel and turn it in more aggressively. That's not something I did as a newer rider about a year ago. So I'm learning to appreciate more and more an aggressive riding position. It'd be interesting to spend seat time on a bike that's more geared toward that sort of riding. What the V Strom does really well is comfort. You sit in this very upright seating position. I will say the previous owner raised the handlebars by an inch, brought them back by an inch, and dropped the pegs by an inch. So it's not quite the factory seating position. A little bit of highway for you. I've actually done quite a bit of highway riding with this bike, and that does make me sort of wonder why I put these tires on here, because as you can maybe hear, they're loud. You hear them much more than the stock tire, which is to be expected. It's a pretty aggressive off-roady kind of tire I've got in the front and fairly aggressive in the rear, so not surprising. But what actually bothers me a bit more is once you get this thing up to about 85 miles per hour, you can start to get speed wobbles from the front, and that makes me a bit uncomfortable. Let's see if we can replicate that here. I don't know if we're gonna, let's see. Yeah, it was pretty stable right there, and it's not often that I'm riding that fast. I really shouldn't be riding that fast. It's clearly above the speed limit, but you know, you take these things out, and the whole point of them is to have fun, and it's a little bit the whole speed wobble situation, but it's also the fact that what if I needed to come to an emergency stop, and I was at highway speeds or a little bit above highway speed? Are these tires going to be able to do that as well as something like the factory tire or a little bit more street-oriented tire? Probably not. And for that, I will probably end up swapping these tires back, maybe after the winter. Maybe try to do a little bit of more off-road riding. I thought I would do more off-road riding, to be honest, and I think a lot of riders probably do. They're like, oh yeah, I would love to have the opportunity or at least the option to take my bike off-road. I'll do that all the time. And then how often do they actually do that? You know, maybe if you lived right near some off-road type trails, but in that case, just get yourself a dual sport. So I'm sure if I were to actually get around to taking this bike camping like I'd like to do someday, I'd be fine to get through whatever campsite sort of trails I need to with more of the stock dual sporty or I should say adventure bike kind of tires. These are a little bit more fitted for someone who's genuinely going to be spending about 50% of their time off-road, which again is what they say. They say they're more of a 50-50 on-road off-road tire, and realistically I am off-road, maybe dirt roads 15% of the time, and off-roads at this point like 5% of the miles. So I think I would enjoy tossing the bike around a little bit more with some different tires. Speaking of off-road, let's take it off-road a little bit. See how it fares. Not going to be the most rigorous off-road section, but let's just go down this little 2-track, as we call it here in Michigan. A little bit of mud right there, actually. V Strom suspension is fairly compliant, especially at this price point. Running along this track just fine. That is another one of the things I like about the V Strom, is being able to take 2 people fairly easily. Whenever Alyssa and I go out riding, she sits on back with the case that gives her a little backrest, and she loves it. This bike's very comfortable for her. What I do like about these tires is getting to have a little bit more confidence in the dirt road stuff. Because I do really like being able to take the V Strom out down any sort of dirt road and just adventure. I mean, when I do get time, when I set aside a few hours on a Saturday or something to just go ride, there are so many little nook and cranny type dirt roads around so many places. I mean, I assume most areas, but at least around here, and I can just be like, oh, let's just dip off the road real quick and check some of those out, and then you kind of see what there is to see. Sometimes it's just a pretty kind of country farm style road, or sometimes it goes to nowhere. Sometimes you find some cool stuff. So I do like being able to do that. These tires are, they allow you just a little bit more confidence on the dirt roads. And I think that's one of the more important things for me right now, as still a fairly new rider, about 3.5 years under my belt. Just the confidence aspect. I'm sure there are veteran riders who could do amazing things with this bike, even on the stock tires. But for me, having that little bit of a crutch helps. After a year of ownership, any complaints with the V Strom? Yeah, I'd say not a big fan of the windshield situation. You do get some buffering, and what you get, more importantly, is air coming from the sides of the windshield. That's been a bothersome trait for me. The fact that I can get my head completely blocked by this windshield extender, but I still get hit a lot on my body with air, and I don't know, I haven't ridden enough bikes for enough amount of time to know how typical that is, but kind of a mild annoyance of just like And as I mentioned earlier, I could see the benefit of having a more exciting motor, especially after spending some time on the Triumph, Trident 660, what else? Even my Ninja 650 had a little bit more of an exciting power band. This bike certainly gets the job done. It goes fast, but it doesn't do it with much excitement. And I could see myself wanting to get into a bike with a little bit more of that. As I said earlier, for some people, totally not an issue. That's not what they're looking for, and that's why they get the V Strom. They want more of that just predictable, smooth, tractory sort of motor. But I think I'd prefer something with a little bit more character at this point. That being said, I think the V Strom is a very good bike. I certainly enjoyed having it. I don't think it'll be leaving the stable soon. I go back and forth, but there's something to be said for just being happy with what you've got for a little while. I mean, it's just human nature to always want something else, to always feel dissatisfied with what you've got and to try to make something different. That's just kind of human nature to improve, if you will. We've also got the Grom in the stable, so that provides a little bit more of that fun hooligan sort of riding experience. I think it's nice having the V Strom for putting on miles when I get a chance to. It is nice having all of that storage back there. There are times when I'll take the V Strom when I actually have to go run some errands. In fact, just the other week, I had this thing out and ran 5 or 6 different errands and taking stuff out and putting stuff in the back compartments, and it's nice to be able to do that. So this is a nice complement to the Grom. I'm just riding around local or going out to purely ride. The Grom is a lot of fun. But I could see myself wanting to swap this out with something else. And I'm torn with exactly what that would be, because it could be something more sporty, touring-ish, like a Ninja 1000 SX. Got the hard cases that come from the factory and a lot faster, a lot more powerful, cool looking, but still comfortable. I could go something more full sport, something like an R6. I've considered the new R7, but I do think I'd want a little bit more power if I'm going to bother upgrading at all. I have had my eyes on the new MT09, redone for 2021, especially the SP that gets cruise control. I think that would be pretty neat, especially after it just won the comparison on motorcycle.com against all its contemporaries. So I was kind of thinking about a KTM 890, Duke 890, but I don't know, there's something that kind of scares me about the KTMs. I've also kind of toyed with the idea of just getting something super bonkers like a second-gen Hayabusa or a ZX14R, just to really pin down that craziness aspect. But the weight of those and the presumed insurance costs probably going to keep me out of those. I think I want something lightweight. I think I want something flickable and fun, and something that I could still put Alyssa on the back of. So maybe a little bit of modded out MT09, kind of modded into a touring bike. Maybe I need to try the Tracer 900, the one that just came out. But I don't know. We always want more, and when you just look yourself in the face and say, hey, this bike is plenty good, the V Strom really is good. It's been a great bike for the last year and had absolutely no issues. Pretty much just change the oil once and keep the chain tight and lubed, and this thing always starts right up and is ready to go. So thank you all so much for watching. I know we kind of rambled on a little bit there, but I've enjoyed having the V Strom. It's a good bike for the right sort of biker, someone who prioritizes a little bit more of the experience outside of the motorcycle than strictly how much fun are they getting from riding the motorcycle hard. If you want to see more of our bike videos, check the playlist in the description for our update on our CTX 700 and our Honda Grom. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.